So when you look at a smaller company that may have 50 stores versus a 200 store chain, they've got to be able to take that region and maximize their efficiency in terms of sales dollars and customer penetration. The only way they're going to do that is working through first party data with the smaller retailers through an RMN platform that will actually give them the influx in terms of getting in and touching the lives of those consumers that they actually own.
Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Retail Perch. And Gary, this is, I think, our second or third episode with a new logo and the new backgrounds. I'm liking it.
That's right. Yeah, no, it is. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Courtney did a nice job.
And today, Gary and I, for those of you who are listening in and on the audio version, we're actually totally synced because, well, Gary's colorblind. He always thinks we're wearing the same shirts. So, but today we actually have the same color of shirts. We're as close as it can possibly get based on the quality of our cameras, right? But I like this new logo, Gary. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's nice and clean.
Yeah,
Doesn't distract from the conversation.
yeah, and we managed to get out of our studios, and we're now have a plain background. I kind of like that. The studio kind of made me feel a little claustrophobic, boxed in.
Right? Yeah, it's always nice to get out.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anyway, so listen, we have a repeat guest on the Retail Perch today, and we've had, I think, I want to say a couple of conversations with Ron in the past, but it's always great to have him back on because it's never ending, the discussion that we can have with Ron. There's just so many cool things to talk about here. Gary, do you want to give a quick intro to Ron? I know you've known him for a long, long time, and so I'll leave it to you.
So Ron and I go back, gosh, what, over 25 years now, Ron, I think. First met when you were with Kroger and rolling out loyalty. I forget which division it was that we were in when we first met, but anyway, known Ron a long time. And I'll let Ron go into more of his history, but in my thinking, Ron has got just a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge and wisdom, right? Locked away in that head of his. And as he and I have talked about different times, it's really surprising how much knowledge gets lost over time. And we've talked about things that we were doing literally 25 years ago that seem to have been forgotten, or learnings from way back when that seem to have been forgotten today. So I think it's great to every once in a while start resurfacing some of that information and knowledge. But Ron, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Gary, and it's a pleasure to be with you too, and Shaker. What an opportunity to talk about with Retail Perch and what you're doing today, because you're actually changing the dynamics of the grocery industry, and so proud to be part of that.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Ron, why don't you give us sort of a quick sort of thumbnail sketch of your background, because you've had a lot of experience on not only the retail side, but the technology side and so on over the years.
For the audience, I've been blessed to grow up in an engineering family, computer science as well as electrical. And so when you're in that environment, your father kind of pushes you that direction. But I graduated with a business degree. However, my father quickly switched me to, I became a statistical quality control engineer, which Shaker didn't know that. And so I was doing stats for the steel industry to bring it back into the modern ages, doing role models with computerization way back right before I started with the Kroger career. As things happen in your life, they closed down plants, and I was actually looking for an opportunity. So my family and I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I actually became vice president, general manager of a company, and put it on Inc. 500, and won small business awards with that company. Then he died. He was 55 years old and died with a brain tumor, and it was unfortunately, so they were going to sell the company. And my next door neighbor happened to be working for Kroger's, and he said, "Hey, Ron, come work for Kroger's. You're going to love this." and they're a great company. So I was a bagger for Kroger's, of course, like most teenagers. And when I came into the organization, I was just so blessed. I came in as a co-manager, became a store manager in a very rapid time. Uh, then I was promoted as a category manager, where I actually changed the dynamics of some categories. Was privileged to write category management templates. Actually did computer assisted ordering, front end scheduling, POS integration with what was called price management systems. We did catalog management templates, and then I was also put on the private brands committee too, on how Kroger should place and materialize private brands. Uh, I was then rolled back into the store, as they often do sometimes. The operations versus merchandising switched, and I was in the store for 1 week when Vernon McNeil, who was the operations who went into merchandising, came out to see me and said, "What are you doing here, Ron?" And I go, "What do you mean, sir?" I said, "I'm going to be a store manager waiting for the next district manager position to open up." And he said, "No, no, no. You're a merchant. You're a marketer. You don't need to be operating in stores. I got to have you back. So tomorrow you report back to me in merchandising, and you're in the marketing department now." So that's how my career got into marketing. Just a wonderful opportunity through a gentleman that just recognized it. But him and I did some strange things together, and I have to tell you about it because, so like milk, when I was a category manager, everybody knew we took every category and we analyzed its from a sales standpoint and penetration of how sales should grow and what that opportunity would be. Well, we knew that we called it the strategic category was milk, because everybody came in the store in those days for milk. So I put milk last in line. And Brandon McNeil came to see me when I would, and he goes, "What are you doing? You moved milk 50 feet away from the door where the milk comes out at." I said, "Yes, sir, but it's last in line." So think about this. They got to cross pass biscuits and cheese and butter and yogurt before they ever get to milk. And I said, "I'll bet you sales went up." So he got mad at me and he said, "Well, we're going to test this." And so we did it in 5 stores, and sales went up 8% in all the other categories. And
Yeah.
he goes, "I see your point. I see your point." So, and I did the same thing in beer
Yeah.
too. And we were 4 years declining in beer, and then Vernon McNeil said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to change the dynamic of the box." And we went from a minus 4% in sales to a plus 12. And he goes, "Okay, I get it. I ain't gonna bother you anymore. It's all yours." So
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
the
interesting.
power of merchandising.
that's right. That's right. So anyway, that's how I got into marketing, and I was doing some fantastic things. And then Mark Thompson, who was the division president in the Nashville division, said, "I think your next project is you're going to really love." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I want you to go out and learn everything you can about marketing and customers and what are we going to do next." So he put me on an airplane, and I spent 6 months analyzing the entire industry. He said, do it stealthy, do it secretly, go out and learn, go visit all the competition, what's going on in the marketplace, and then come back and let's see what happens. So I was handpicked to launch the Kroger Plus card. And the rest, as you know, is history. They had 53 same store sales growth, quarter over quarter, for Kroger's, and just blessed to have been able to do that. And in fact, Gary, I did digital back in 2001 that was ended after I left the Kroger company because they didn't know what to do with it. But just a
Yep.
lot of fun things. Just blessed to meet, cross paths with some great people that believed in me and allowed me to do some things that were really supportive. From there, I went to AppCard today. They were called S&H Solutions, then are AppCard today. So I called on the grocery industry, actually called on Major League Baseball, and called on Barnes and Noble, and called on the retail grocery industry, doing marketing for them. Then fortunate enough to go to KVAT Food City, where I was their vice president for 10 years. And then I went to Albertsons division in United, where I was their vice president for a couple of years. And then I was fortunate enough to work for a gentleman named Richard Gunn along the pathway. He became the senior vice president of Wise Markets, and he said, "Come work for me here." So I went back up to Wise Markets. I was there 5.5 years as their vice president of marketing. And then I went to Rouse's. for 2 years with Donnie Rouse and the team and helped them. And then now I'm basically in the industry trying to educate, support, and be a consultant the best way I can. Thanks to people like you, Gary, and Shaker, that are helping me guide me along this path.
Well, I don't know how much guidance I can give you. I think it's the reverse. So I'm seeking guidance here. But anyway, listen, it's terrific to have you back on the Perch. Obviously, what a tremendous background and history. So, I mean, I know there's any number of things we could be talking about here, given your background and experience, but I think there's a couple of topics that kind of, it's probably on a lot of people's minds. Obviously, this new industry of retail media network, I know it's been the buzz past couple of years, but it looks like there's some real traction, money, and companies coming up in this area. And so, Ron, the question really is about how have you seen CPGs and media evolve over your time, right? Like, what was the participation of CPGs apart from selling product in supermarket? What was the collaboration to co-market their brand? That's kind of how I look at retail media network, is how are CPGs trying to drive more brand awareness and product awareness to drive people back into the store to buy their product, right?
Yeah,
How have you seen
Shaker,
that
back
evolve?
when I was with Kroger's, when I was back with Kroger's, I actually went to 20 of the top CPG manufacturers and told them how loyalty and customers were going to be integral with them in that pathway for them. So when you look at retail media today, way I feel about it is every small business has got to work with a retail media partner because they don't have the forthwith to call on all the CPG industry, and they need that. As you know, the FSI inserts was actually all the digital coupons and all the brand managers and marketers of all the CPG industry. It was just standard. They could just put a coupon out there and they knew the results and they would sustain themselves. Well, that's all gone digital, as we know, over these years. And now that is parlaying itself into an RMN because the community in terms of the CPG industry want to be able to talk to the customers. The only way to do that is through the first party data of the retailer, whether it be a small retailer or large. Unfortunately, as you know, when you look out there, the Walmarts of this world, and the Amazon, Krogers, and Instacart are garnering 70+% of all RMN dollars, and so it behooves us to work with the small industry to conglomerate as many as we can and get as much money as we can for all of these smaller retails to maximize the efficiencies of it. Because we all know in e-commerce platform like Walmart's, they don't make money at e-commerce. No one does because of the cost of labor. And so they're offsetting that with their RMN dollars. Well, the CPG industry really needs to be talking to the smaller retailer too and giving them the opportunity to offset their cost of labor. Because when you're looking at a labor to pick an order, that could be $8, $12, $15. It depends on how many items they can pick per hour.
Wow.
So
What's the objective of the RMN? Is it awareness? Is it sales? What do you see as the objective? And how do CPGs look at measuring their ROAS, as they call it?
Well, the CPG industry really cares about their impact in the consumer awareness, and are they going to be able to drive sales and value in terms of that product that they're doing with. So when you look at a smaller company that may have 50 stores versus a 200 store chain, they've got to be able to take that region and maximize their efficiency in terms of sales dollars and customer penetration. The only way they're going to do that is working through first party data with the smaller retailers through an RMN platform that will actually give them the influx in terms of getting in and touching the lives of those consumers that they actually own, if they think about it, because those consumers love their brands and hopefully will sustain that. When you look back in the old days with Coke and Pepsi, 30% love Pepsi, 30% love Coke, and then 30% were switchers. Well, the CPG industry with an RMN can now tap into that same kind of resources and target those customers to grow their sales and to reward them or to make sure that they sustain their sales long term with that retailer through the CPG industry.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
yeah. I was just going to say it's almost an extension of what was shopper marketing, right? Where, at least amongst the mid-size and larger retailers, the retailer and brand would collaborate around the data and, more times than not, target to some degree, right, certain shoppers. Almost seems like retail media is an extension of that and a way for the CPGs to redirect a lot of the dollars that they used to spend on mass advertising, television, billboards, print, etc., that just aren't the same anymore, redirected to a better return through retail media.
Gary, I was going to tell
You're
you that I
absolutely
was
right,
watching.
Gary. The ROI. Good, good, Shaker.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron. Finish up.
You're absolutely correct. If you look at that, the return on investment is truly one-to-one on a customer. So the spend is so efficient today. If you're going through a retail media to first party data, because you're touching the customer you want to reach real time, and your dollar spent is targeted directly to that customer for the reason and intent that the CPG wants to, whether it's to garner more customers, reward existing customers, or whatever that is. As I look at RMN, every CPG needs to be talking to the merchandising staff, but the merchandising staff needs to be involved marketing in a full-fledged way from an RMN standpoint, because you got to think about that. I want to be able to talk to the CPG and say, I can build a campaign, I can do this marketing, I can talk to this customer on your behalf, that the merchandising staff don't necessarily care about, because they're about their sales and profits in their category. But the marketing team knows that customer and knows who they can talk to and what lives they can touch in order to change that CPG's life. So it's so critical that merchandising and marketing communicate today, and RMN is a channel in which they can utilize the first party data to make a difference, not just with the retailer, but also with the CPG industry.
Yeah.
Interesting, Gary. I was talking to another retailer recently, and I think one of the challenges that I see that they have is marketing very often doesn't have access to the same level of data that merchandising has about overall company performance.
Yeah.
Maybe they have it specific to their campaigns and they're specific to the promotions that they run. So they're kind of operating in a little bit of a silo.
Yeah.
I know you love that word, silo. I see your cup, and it's no longer the Retail Perch cup, and it's the Bionic Retail cup, but we're going to call you out on that. But I see that, what you're saying, Ron, is, the roles have to be more blended now, that you
Yes.
need more coordinated efforts to maximize these campaigns, and you can no longer, be, stick your head in the sand and do what you've always been doing, right?
That's right.
And access to data really needs to be more democratized within a retail organization, so that, you're making decisions off the same data and the same perspective on the data, and the KPIs need to be shared. Obviously, there's KPIs that are specific to each department, but there are some overall KPIs that are fundamental to the overall business that everybody probably needs to keep their eye on, right?
That's correct. One of the dynamics that I always told, which caught the eye of the executives of the companies that I worked for, and showed how marketing actually can make a difference, is I can see a store trend before the store manager even knows what's going on. So, for example, there's only 4 ways you can change sales, and that's just get more customers in the door. That is get more items in the basket. That is to get their shopper frequency up. It's the old RFM. And the last one is average item retail. What is the inflation or deflation rate of the product? So I can see sales trends and tell you that store's in trouble or that store's on a great growth pattern because they're adding customers and their sales going up. Their sales may have gone up through inflation and they wouldn't even know it because they were losing customers in another scenario. So if retail comes back to being flat next year, they're in trouble because their sales are going to go down automatically. So I could see things, and I was telling the executives about how that approach works. And all of a sudden, merchandising and marketing are collaborating. And that's what you have to think about, is because you can see trends inside the data. And from a marketing perspective, with dealing with customers, that category management and merchandising and actually the executive level aren't looking at.
Yeah. So
Right.
where do you guys think retail media is going. And it absolutely presents a, much better return on that advertising spend compared to anything in the past. But, one of the complaints you hear from the CPGs, on a somewhat regular basis is, they're spending to reach the same shopper, right? They got to go through Walmart's walled garden, they got to go through Amazon's walled garden or Publix's or whoever, and they're reaching the same shoppers ultimately, but having to pay two, three, four, six times, right, by having to work with each of the retailers. Where do you see all this evolving to?
I don't see. So,
That is a
Gary,
great.
I was just going to make an observation here, Ron, before you chimed in with your answer. So, I've been, past couple of days, I was watching some tennis on TV, and I only see two types of companies advertising. They're either insurance companies or they're pharmaceutical companies, right? And
Yeah.
right, I mean, majority of the
Yeah,
ads are insurance or pharmaceutical, right? And
yeah.
it's amazing the kind of names that come up with these drugs, and I didn't know there was a whole advertising industry focused around just naming drugs. But
Yeah.
it seems like there has to be some kind of a balance between broad awareness and targeted outreach, right? And I don't know where, how the retailer plays a role in that. It seems like broad outreach. I don't know how much the retailer can help with that, but targeted outreach, I can definitely see the retailer having a part to play because it can create targeted audiences based on
Yes.
understanding first party data, right? But Ron, if you can chime in, where do you see this going? How do you make sure this doesn't become an echo chamber? And you're advertising the same product to the same people because that's all the people you have data on.
That's where you have to use your store as a leverage for campaigns and promotions, and build that stronger then, and be in the community and be a community support arm, so that you take the CPG and you make them a success factor all the way into the store level where customers are shopping. I think RMN, you've got the biggies out there that are trying to take all dollars, siphon those away, and that's of course Instacart, Kroger's, and so forth. But we really strategically got to be able to show the CPG industry from an RMN standpoint how we can make that successful and sustain that. In the old days, merchandisers used to sell space. Now we can sell campaigns, and how
Yeah.
that makes a difference to the CPG industry, because this campaign will make a difference to your customers. And lo and behold, they can statistically see the trend and the changes in that customer from an RMN standpoint, and then back to their ROI.
Yeah. I also think, particularly the mid-market retailers, in my mind, need to start thinking a little further out and try and get ahead of the next trend, if you will. As we all know, grocery retailers of any and all sizes have a history of being followers. And I think in today's world where, tech capabilities, innovation, everything is just continuing to accelerate, retailers need to think a little differently. And, one of the places that I would suggest the mid-market retailers look at is how they can effectively evolve trade promotion and even the sharper marketing campaigns that they've run, leveraging all this data and bringing the same tool set to trade and sharper marketing that has been put in place for retail media. And by that I mean full attribution, right? Being able to measure everything and truly understand the impact of that promotion. And I think ultimately, I think that's where all this continues to evolve to. And I think retailers should be thinking that way and trying to get ahead of this.
I totally agree with you, Gary. Just like Bird's Eye's capability with AI and shopper marketing and campaigns and stuff, you're measuring everything, and you'll be able to stream that back, because with retail media, you can't just give the dollars and not know what the return on that dollar is. And so therefore, there's got to be some collaboration between that retailer, even mid markets or small ones, and be able to measure that. That's where an AI platform such as Bird's Eye has makes all the difference in the world, because I want to be able to talk to an RMN platform that's going to give me the results give me what the next opportunity for campaigns are, and then leveraging that for the future. When can I do my next one? What is my timeline for how am I going to strategically grow sales? Because you've showed me the cause and effect by delving into this retailer, would it be mid-size, small, large, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Maybe this
The
is a
day of
good
just
place
getting
to,
dollars is over from a CPG standpoint.
right. And maybe this is a good point to segue into the other topic that we were planning to discuss, which is really, what's becoming off that weekly ad, right? As we move away from print. And I guess it seems like there is an angle where the retailer is interested in retail media networks from a perspective of gaining wider distribution and acquiring customers by somehow going digital with their weekly ad, right? I mean, there's one angle of how do the CPGs drive sales, but the other angle of how do we keep the weekly ad to still be relevant in this digital age?
Yeah.
So Ron, what do you see from that perspective? Where do you see the future going?
Well, I thought when pandemic happened, COVID, that we went 100% digital because you didn't know what product you were going to get. You ordered it and you ordered 10 truckloads, and you might get one, you may get zero. And so therefore we could not print an ad because we had no idea whether that ad was going to be fulfilled from a consumer perspective during the pandemic. So we went digital, and basically the whole grocery industry went digital for the most part. And then we come out of the pandemic, and a lot of the grocery industry, as the old hat, just went right back into print. And they didn't know how to sustain that digital because they just weren't thinking ahead of saying, okay, because print is the most expensive thing you have in your marketing department. It is the biggest cost. And if I told you how much it was, it would shock you, but it's almost half of your whole budget. And when you think about that, all those dollars saved. So I tried to convince all of my retailers, anyone I would talk to, is if you're going to print, just print one page or a 2-page ad and put the rest of those dollars saved into your social media, your digital, your RMN, and
Yeah.
utilize those dollars to talk to customers and market to customers. Don't take it to the bottom line as some of the retailers did. They just popped it on the bottom line and felt good. Oh, we saved this much money now. But the idea is you got to use that to market to customers. And in this AI world, as you know, strategically, I can talk to each and every customer based on their purchase behavior or lack of purchase behavior. And that is a key feature that you would be building an ad, a personalization ad, or, personalized pricing as eventually you're going to get to, and have that wave go through. The consumer is going to be happy, the retailer is going to be happy, and it's ultimately the CPG will be happy.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you're saying, long seen the advantages of digital, but I guess there's two things that come to my mind around that. Is one, it is almost shocking to me the number of retailers, again, of all sizes, that I see failing to measure digital engagement. They don't know how many of their customers, how much of their weekly sales they're touching digitally each week. They just throw money at email or their e-com site or whatever, but they're not tracking the measuring engagement. The other is that engagement has got to be relevant. One of the things I just see this personally, here in Denver, we've got Safeway and King Soopers, which is Kroger, are the two dominant players, along with Whole Foods and Aldi, et cetera, Trader Joe's. But I get almost too many emails from Safeway, from King Soopers, not quite as many from Whole Foods, but I tend to ignore them. There's nothing there for me. There's no reason for me to take my time and actually, open that email up and read through it. So I think they've really lost sight of the value proposition that they need to create and execute against. And I think that, and you guys can react to that, but I think that leads some retailers back to print and direct mail. And, Ron, you just showed me a direct mailer you got from Kroger in your market the other day. But Shaker, what are you seeing around all that?
I think the challenge that most retailers are facing around, again, it's the same challenge as retail media, attribution, right? When you go digital, I think the challenge to be able to reach your existing customers, you have information, maybe emails effective, right? Because they're looking for stuff. I think they still haven't found an efficient solution. How do you replace the distribution and reach that you had with paper with digital? And to me, there are lots of companies out there that promise that they can distribute digitally, but they're not able to effectively provide attribution information, right? Which is this actually, what's my return on the spend? Like you
Yeah.
knew, I mean, while paper is expensive, you kind of knew at least you knew how many mailboxes you were reaching, how many
Oh, yeah.
mailbox. Yeah, you had some idea of reach, right? And to some degree, you can say, hey, that I could see the correlation between reach and effectiveness of the ad. But I think with digital, some of that is being lost. And I think the problem again, Gary, is, this connectivity tissue, I think the industry needs to evolve into a more data-centric operation where there is almost, I don't want to say a common, but really there's a data lake of sorts that the entire company can dip into to be able to measure, right? And I think that's where I see the biggest hole in most of these things. A lot of people have cool, mousetraps of how to convert your ad to digital and make it
Yeah.
look really cool and sexy and distribute it. But there is no. Most merchandisers are wondering, okay, now how do I know if this really worked? How do I, show me an example where it actually lifted sales on this. So I think that's where I see the big challenge here, Gary.
So are you saying the data is out there, but splintered, in a
Yeah,
lot of different places? It needs to be brought together, and the retailers need to understand it and use it.
yeah,
That,
yeah,
that goes
absolutely.
back,
Go ahead,
that
Ron.
goes back to the merchandising department and marketing in collaboration, utilizing the same data sync so that we're all measuring the same thing and seeing what we're all trying to do. Because you're exactly right, Shaker. I don't think they're really looking at the digital data and really making a formulation of how successful or unsuccessful it was. Just like in the old newspaper print, we knew it was 30% successful. We just didn't know what 30% we were attracting.
Yeah.
When you measure
You know,
an ad, by the way, you're lucky to get 10 to 20% penetration, for customers. So what
Yeah.
was the real content of the ad versus what you can do today with AI and personalization to customers and see the results real time.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the advantage, think of the advantages of going digital. You can now break your ad down into the 15 blocks that are in your front page, and you can choose to target specific items to specific people with a link to the rest of the ad. But
Yes.
then now you can attribute that specific ad block and say, hey, this particular ad block generated more traffic than others. I mean, there's just obvious advantages with digital, right? I think second problem, Gary, which we talked to a couple of weeks ago on our podcast, was around identity resolution, right? To be able to
Yeah.
understand, and that requires multiple data sets to be brought together. In fact, earlier this morning on my walk, I was listening to a podcast where one of the founders of AdMob, which got acquired by Google, was talking about this problem where, when advertising went from the web to mobile primarily, and most people were using the browser on mobile as opposed to the web, they had to suddenly figure out, how do I know who I'm advertising to? Because that whole technology was just taking off around the
Right.
iPhone and Android timeframe.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is fundamentally what is required to be able to better target and better attribute and get a true ROAS, right?
Yeah.
Return on advertising spend, which I think the CPGs ultimately, if you think about it, they're looking for promotion effectiveness, which is what's the least amount of dollars I need to spend to drive up sales.
Yeah. No, that's right. And, I think one of the most important pieces of data, certainly to retailers, is their customer data, their shopper data, identifying those transactions. And again, to sort of loop back how we started here today, Ron and I, launched loyalty 25, 30 years ago or more. And, we're fortunate to sort of be in the right place, right time, the right tools to drive, 90%, 95%, or even higher identification rates of sales. Um, and there's still a handful of retailers that work at that level. But it again is sort of surprising slash shocking to me the number of retailers I speak with that are only identifying 40, 50, 60% of their sales and think that's fine.
Right, right. Yeah, either they think that's fine or they just don't know how to move the needle,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And yet they're missing, pure gold.
Yeah, totally, totally. I agree. I agree. So, Gary, as we always do, we overshot the time, but
Well,
so
we'll
this
just
is
have to
this
bring
is one of
Ron back
those
again.
in Greek mythology, those Sisyphus, right? This is a Sisyphean task, right? You never we never actually get there. But
Shaker, Gary and I often talk about this, but it's amazing that, loyalty and data, even dunnhumby even was in 2003, too. Uh, that's 25, 30 years ago. We all had data, we all were doing it, but a lot of retailers never evolved in the utilization of that data and bringing
Yeah.
it forward. So, it's just astounding. It's taken that long for some of them to even realize that there's golden nuggets in this data that can make a difference. And
oh,
I'll tell you, because Don McGeorge was the president of the Kroger company at the time when I was there, and Don said to me clearly, he said, "There's a lot of nice to knows in that data, but Ron, make it actionable."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and AI makes it really actionable today.
Actionable. That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shaker, as you said.
well, I think we'll obviously get Ron back because I think there's many other topics we got to discuss, and I know where to reach Ron around, so it should be, we should be able to get him back. But hopefully, you guys enjoyed the discussion. I think it's a big topic. I think trying to it's interesting, right? Because there's CPGs are trying to optimize cost on the RMN side, right, to get better effectiveness of their promotions, and
Exactly.
the retailers are getting excited about getting the dollars from the CPG,
Yeah.
but the CPG's intention is to shrink the dollars because they want to get more performance out of those dollars, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like you have this opposing forces, the immovable object meeting the unstoppable force type of thing.
Yeah.
And something has to give at some point where you have to go back to what's the business basics, what's the business fundamental. It's moving product off the shelf, getting more customers in,
Yes.
and I feel like things are going to come back full circle at some point, or somebody's going to figure out an effective hybrid solution that meets both
Yeah.
objectives here, right?
That's what I want you there for, Shaker, because I want to take AC Nielsen and IRI and combine it with what you're doing and be that platform for the future, because I think it's time for that.
Be careful what you say, Ron. Lots of people listening. So
I thought
no,
we
no,
were
but I
done
think
with
it's all
that.
very exciting. I think it's all very exciting. That I think the opportunity is huge, and there's obviously we need competition to keep improving. I think competition is what keeps you on the cutting edge. So I think it's a terrific thing. But Ron, it's great to have you here. Great conversation,
Yep.
as always. And Gary, any
Thanks for joining.
closing
No.
words? I mean, I know you're melting in Denver, 100 degrees. Finally cooled off here a little bit. So, but I hope you guys are having a great summer, and we will talk to you soon again on the Retail Perch. We've got a steady stream of guests coming, and your summer is going to be pretty busy listening to us. All right. All right, Gary. Thanks, Ron, again. And
Thank you.